Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen last week, a monster game he had versus the Kansas City Chiefs. 273 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns. And this week, a great matchup at the Miami Dolphins. We just saw Lamar and that Baltimore Raven offense go in there and put up a big performance. I think Allen, once again, this week versus division rival, the Dolphins, who obviously traded some key pieces away on the defense. He's definitely a top option this week. Number 2, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Lamar, he returned last week in that ball game at Miami on Monday Night Football, and he picked up where he left off, having a big season. 4 touchdowns in that game, 2 of them to Andrews, 1 to Rashad Bateman, and 1 to Kohler. And this week, a little bit of a tougher matchup in Minnesota, where I thought last week Minnesota did play a good ball game at the Detroit Lions, but Lamar Jackson, he didn't even run the football much in last week's game, where this week I think he'll take some more opportunities running the football versus a better defense. And obviously each and every week he's a top 2, 3 option. Number 3, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, he's having another good season for this Eagle team. I know he hasn't stretched the field out a ton this year's Jalen Hurts, but he really hasn't had to with this Eagle team having a good season, 5-3 on the year. Jalen Hurts, he's still putting up good fantasy numbers. I know this week a tougher matchup, obviously, at the Green Bay Packers, one of the better defenses in the league. But Jalen Hurts, he's been matchup-proof all season long. And with his rushing upside and obviously the tush-push for rushing touchdowns, weekly, he's a top 3 to 5 option. Number 4, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. This week a tougher matchup with Pittsburgh coming in. We saw last week Pittsburgh shut down arguably the best offense in the league in the Indianapolis Colts, where they couldn't do anything, and Daniel Jones turned the football over 5 times in that game. So this week, Pittsburgh, I know on the road their defense don't travel as good, and we know this Charger offense is loaded this season. Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, Rondé Gatson emerging this season as a rookie tight end. But this week versus Pittsburgh, still think Herbert's going to go out there and get his numbers. Number 5, Drake May, the New England Patriots. This season, what a next step type of year it's been for Drake May. 7-2 on the season is this New England Patriot team. He's been matchup proof all season long, and he's doing it with a bunch of players in this offense. Stephon Diggs obviously having a decent first year over there in New England. Kayshon Boutte, even though we don't know if he's going to be available in this game with a hamstring injury, he's playing good football. And Demario Douglas all of a sudden has been a good deep ball threat, and Hunter Henry solid as a tight end. So this week in a potential track meet at Tampa Bay, I like May once again to go out there and get his usual 25 to 30 fantasy points. Number 6, Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford having a monster season. He's locked in. Puka Nacua, it's having a great year. Devontae Adams, a great first season as well with this Los Angeles Ram team. And we'll see if Puka plays or not, but I just think it doesn't matter. We know this 49er defense banged up. Nick Bosa out for the season. Fred Warner out for the season. And Stafford, he's been matchup-proof majority of the season. So with all those factors, I think he goes out there, has a big game this week. Number 7, Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos. So Bo Nix and this Bronco team, they've been playing good football. In the last 3 weeks, they've been getting off to slow starts most of those games. And then Bo Nix in the second half goes out there and he's going to get his numbers. And that's with Cortland Sutton not doing much. R.J. Harvey's been great catching the football out of the backfield. We've seen Troy Franklin emerge over the last few weeks. And this week in a great matchup with Vegas coming in, especially on Thursday Night Football, where we know these ball games are high scoring. I like Knicks as a top 10 option. Number 8, Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So hopefully Tampa Bay gets some reinforcements back in the lineup. I think Bucky Irvin, he's going to play in this game, where they would have put him on IR, and they want to just wait after the bye for Bucky to come in. Emeka Egbuka should be more healthier, obviously, with the bye weekend coming off the hamstring. And we'll see if Chris Godwin gives it a go as well for this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team. So with New England coming in, and I know they're bend but don't break type of defense, and 7-2 on the year, it just doesn't matter. Baker Mayfield, I've said this in a lot of videos this season, he's got that gunslinger mentality. He's a gamer. He's a dog, no doubt about it. And this week, with New England coming in, he's going to find ways to make plays and put points on the board. Number 9, Jackson Dart of the New York Giants. It's been a great start to his career in terms of putting up fantasy numbers and showing he could be a franchise quarterback. I know it's only 6 games for Jackson Dart, but think about it. Malik Neighbors, he hasn't played with him at all this season, tearing the ACL before he was the starter. And he's pretty much playing with Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, and Theo Johnson, his top 3 options in this offense. And also with Cam Scatterbo out for the season, tearing that ankle to shreds in that ball game in Week 8 of Philadelphia. So with all those factors and a matchup with the Chicago Bears where they do get turnovers and get sacks, but they do give up a bunch of points, I think this could be a high-scoring game. And Jackson Dart's going to go out there and do his thing. And also as well with Dart, he's going to get you 5 to 10 points weekly rushing the football. Number 10, Caleb Williams, staying in the same game with the Chicago Bears. So Williams last week, he did a little bit of everything. He had a monster game, had 4 total touchdowns, including a receiving touchdown in that crazy ball game at the Cincinnati Bengals. In New York, their defense isn't good. We see them give up a lot of points. We saw Mac Jones go out there last week and shred this Giant defense. I think Caleb Williams, with Colston Loveland now emerging, and in the backfield, if it's Monangai again or DeAndre Swift, their running game is very strong over there in Chicago. And I don't think the Giants are going to have an answer in this one. Number 11, Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts. So last week was the worst game of the season easily for Daniel Jones, where pretty much he was a great quarterback all year for fantasy football. Last week he had 5 turnovers, but he still went out there and had over 20 fantasy points. He threw for 325 in that game and had 2 total touchdowns with the 5 turnovers. So this week, an overseas game versus the Atlanta Falcons, where their defense, I know, shut down the Bills for the most part in Week 6, but ever since then, their defense can't stop anyone. And I think this Indianapolis Colts team bounces back and has a good game with Daniel Jones obviously leading the way. Number 12, Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. So Jared Goff, it's been a pretty good season for him, but last year I think the numbers overall for this Lion offense were better, and I think that was the Ben Johnson effect. We've seen what the Chicago Bear offense is doing with Ben Johnson as the head coach, and obviously the offensive mind over there. So this week at the Commanders, banged up team, Marshawn Lattimore out for the season, torn ACL. That's a corner down. And last week, him and St. Brown just missed on a couple big plays. So Goff, he still had a 23-point day in last week's ball game. And this week at Washington, like I said, a depleted defense and a team that can't stop anyone after Darnold and the Seahawks went in there, had a big game. I like Goff as a top 12 option. 13, Sam Darnold of the Seattle Seahawks. A great first season for him with the Seahawks team. They're 6-2 on the year. Jackson Smith-Njigba having a monster season already with 5 games over 100 yards. And this week, it's a good matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals. I know the Cardinals last week, they went into Dallas and they shut down a high-powered offense that was averaging 30 points per game. But this week, Sam Darnold and the Seahawks team, they're going to put points on the board. And Darnold's another quarterback who's got that gunslinger mentality and really could stretch the field and make plays with JSN. Number 14, Marcus Mariota of the Washington Commanders. So Detroit's coming in. We know Washington, they got to put a lot of points on the board. It looks like Terry McLaurin is going to be out in this ball game as well, once again with the quad injury. So Debo's got to step up. And Marcus Mariota, we know he's going to get you anywhere from 3 to 8 fantasy points on the ground. So Jaden Daniel possibly might be out for the year after dislocating that elbow on that devastating injury and a gruesome injury to see. But like I said, Mariota could get rushing yards. He's had some good games filling in for Daniels early in the season. And this week versus Detroit, I think he's going to work his way into points, even if it's garbage time. 15, J.J. McCarthy of the Minnesota Vikings. McCarthy last week, good and bad we saw from him. 3 total touchdowns. Him and Justin Jefferson hit on a nice play in the back of the end zone. It was good to see T.J. Hawkinson score a touchdown. And McCarthy has some rushing upside as well, where he ran one in. So he's got good options around him, no doubt about it, in this offense. But this Baltimore defense over the last few weeks, they're buckling down, making plays, and I think Baltimore, they're primed for a run right now. And also, they improved a little bit on defense at the deadline. So I think McCarthy this week, not a crazy upside, but with his rushing ability, still could be a top 15 option. 16, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. So Love now down, Tucker Kraft out for the season, tearing the ACL last week. Matthew Golden banged up. We'll see what his status is going to be entering this ball game on Monday night. And this week, it's a tough matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles coming in. So Love last week, he got bottled up by a mediocre Carolina Panther defense where he only had 9 fantasy points was Jordan Love in last week's game. So this week, I think he'll have a better game than that. But this is a tough matchup versus a Philadelphia Eagle team that's brought in reinforcements as well at the deadline. Jair Alexander, Don Phillips. So this week, I don't think the ceiling is that high, especially without his number 1 target now in Tucker Kraft. 17, Mac Jones of the San Francisco 49ers. So Mac Jones, he's been filling in well for obviously Brock Purdy. And Purdy possibly could play in this game, but week after week where I've had him on the list and didn't play, I'm not going to bother to put him on unless we see him. So if Purdy does play, he'll be in the same range, 17 to the 20 range. And Mac Jones, we know he's a good thrower of the football this season. This offense, they've been depleted, but as long as Christian McCaffrey's been in there, the numbers have been there for Mac Jones, and CMC has helped this team to become 6-3 on the season. So this week in a matchup with division rival, the Los Angeles Rams coming in, I still think Mac Jones could go out there, put up some numbers, and he's another quarterback that he's a pretty tough guy that's going to stay in the pocket and make those tough throws down the field. Number 18, Michael Penix Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons. So Penix Jr., it's been an up and down season. It's the first year as a starter for this Atlanta Falcon team, where last season he started the last few games of the year, but last week he had a nice game with Penix, and that's what he's got to do more of. Feed Drake London and feed Bijan Robinson and a little bit of Kyle Pitts, and that's where he's going to get his numbers. So London had 3 touchdowns last week. Bijan was a big factor catching the football out of the backfield, and this week they know they got to put points on the board versus one of the better offenses in the league, obviously in the Indianapolis Colts. I think Penix overseas game, those are usually high scoring more times than not, could go out there and be a decent option in 2 quarterback leagues. 19, Justin Fields of the New York Jets. I know the Jets haven't named the starter yet, but Fields, he had a big game at the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 8 before the bye. So I think Fields is going to be the starter at least one more week for this Jet team. Cleveland's coming in, and I don't think the ceiling's high. We know Cleveland's a great defense this season in terms of holding teams down points-wise more weeks than not. Obviously getting to the quarterback led by Myles Garrett, one of the better corners in the league as well with Denzel Ward. So with all those factors, and this Jet team, before that Week 8 game at Cincinnati, they didn't have a touchdown for 2 weeks. So with all those factors, Fields has a low ceiling, and the 20th and final quarterback I'm ranking this week is Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. I know Bryce Young, it's been an up and down season for him, but he's obviously much improved than he was last season, Bryce Young, and we've even seen some decent games from him early in the season, and then he got banged up in Week 7 at the Jets. He didn't play in Week 8, and then last week it was a tough matchup at Green Bay, but this week is a streaming option. He's got a good matchup with the New Orleans Saints coming in, a defense that can't stop anyone. They're giving up a ton of points on the season, and I think if you're in a pinch in 2 quarterback leagues, or even in leagues where you got guys on bye like a Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott, and there's not much on the waiver wire, I think Bryce Young in a plus matchup could be a good streaming option. That's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking for Week 10 of the fantasy football season.